Mitt Romney is perhaps one of the only Republicans in the country right now not running for his party's nomination for the presidency, but don't let that make you think that he's not getting involved in the campaign. He is. He started a catfight with Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz recently spoke out against the proposed Iranian nuclear program deal that Obama is negotiating right now, and he said this.
It means, Dana, if this deal goes through, the Obama administration, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, will become the world's leading financiers of radical Islamic terrorism. They will have sent billions of dollars to jihadists who will use that money to murder Americans, to murder Israelis, to murder Europeans.
So, very reasonable, just regular. Everybody's saying that, basically. Everybody's thinking it. Totally reasonable.
Okay, no, they just get to play by different rules. Like if a Democrat said that, immediately eliminated.
He said he funds terrorism.
If they said
he funds terrorism.
If they said George Bush is the biggest funder of terrorism in the world, they would have been disqualified. All the media would have gotten every Democrat in the country to shame him,
denounce him,
apologize on his behalf, and get him kicked out of the party, right? I mean, they was, how could you call Bush a terrorist? How could you do that? Or Cheney, if you said war criminal, they fucking lost it if you said war criminal, which he technically is, let alone if you said he's the biggest funder of terrorism, supporter of terrorism in the world. But Cruz just blithely gets to say it. And Republicans really going to vote for that guy on face alone. On face alone. Look at him. Come on, man.
Cenk, George W. Bush is not the leading funder of terrorism. He was the leading recruiter for terrorists by starting the Iraq War. Ronald Reagan was the leading funder of terrorism when he gave all those weapons to al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. So that's what Ted Cruz said. Now, Mitt Romney...
Can I just back up that point? Because Ted Cruz says stuff like this almost every day. Yesterday, Mike Huckabee said that thing about the ovens, and the day before that, it was about... But MSNBC and Political will still pretend that Alan Grayson is the equivalent of these people.
Exactly. Yeah.
They still will go on. Steve Kornacki will still go on and do a 15-minute segment about how Alan Grayson is crazy because 6 years ago he said that the GOP's healthcare plan was don't get sick and if you do die. That's crazy he said that. And in fact, the DLC wants to get rid of him in favor of a guy who voted in favor of the XO pipeline 10 times.
Yeah.
That's what's liberalism has been marginalized unbelievably because of MSNBC.
Yeah, by liberals.
And Alan Grayson, you know who I think he should do? He should run for president.
Yes.
We need a guy like him to begin to, at least 10% balance. They're attacking with everything they have. They go nuclear every single day. And we got, Bernie, bless his heart, but he doesn't throw bombs.
No.
He's a rational dude who says things that are true. But Alan Grayson, when he says that thing about healthcare, it's absolutely true. You know what happens if you don't have healthcare insurance and you can't afford treatment? You die! That's literal. It's literal, right? Yeah. It's not like a Republican comes and slits your throat. Of course not, right? But if you don't get treatment for cancer, you die. So he points that out, and they're like, oh, my God, how could he? He's the same as Ted Cruz. And the guys making that argument aren't Republicans. They're guys on MSNBC.
Yeah.
It's perverse. It's destructive to our society. It's sickening.
And you had a hard time fitting in over there at MSNBC, I understand.
Oddly enough. Yeah.
So now, Cruz is so bad, and Democrats are so ineffective in fighting back against any of these guys that Mitt Romney has to step
Exactly. Yeah, Mitt Romney, he's a fairly awful guy, but he's not that sort of awful guy. He's not one of the Republicans who's throwing those sorts of bombs. He's just callous and uncaring and doesn't understand the human condition in America. So he responded in this tweet, I am opposed to the Iran deal, but Senator Ted Cruz is way over the line on the Obama terrorism charge, hurts the cause. So that doesn't even count as a bomb against Ted Cruz, but it is still a catfight. And so in response to that tweet, Ted Cruz then said this.
And, one of the reasons Republicans keep getting clobbered is we have leaders like Mitt Romney and like Jeb Bush who are afraid to say that. Now, it's not a question of rhetoric. So Mitt Romney's tweet today said, gosh, this rhetoric is not helpful. John Adams famously said, facts are stubborn things. Describing the actual facts is not using rhetoric. It is called speaking the truth. Part of the reason Mitt Romney got clobbered by Barack Obama is because we all remember that third debate where Barack Obama turned to Mitt and said, I said the Benghazi attack was terrorism, and no one is more upset by Benghazi than I am. And Mitt, I guess, listening to his own advice, said, well, gosh, I don't want to use any rhetoric, so okay, never mind. I'll just kind of rearrange the pencil on the podium here.
But Obama did say it was a terrorist act,
say
and he's like, and Romney wouldn't even lie about it.
Lie.
What kind of
stubborn
Republican is he? He won't lie. And facts are stubborn things, exactly. And he's, on the issue of the billions of dollars that Obama gave to the terrorists. Wait a minute. Again, you're such an unbelievable liar. No, we froze their assets, okay? And it's 6 different countries that are involved here. We convinced China and Russia, who have a lot of money at stake, France, Germany, etc., to freeze Iranian assets. They would sell their oil, and then we wouldn't pay them. We'd just freeze their assets. That was the money that was frozen. And as part of the deal, so that they will not develop a nuclear weapon and use it against us or our allies, we unfroze their assets. We gave them back the money that we had robbed from them in return for getting something for free. For free. We didn't give anything up, right? But if you listen to Cruz, Obama gave him billions of dollars to do the terrorism.
Directly to do terrorism.
Yeah. Directly. And and to John's earlier point, hey, no. At the debates, they've got to ask all these things. You guys keep talking about Iran, right? And you guys also Reagan, right? You guys love it.
Oh.
No, you have to answer this question. Did Reagan sponsor terrorism when he sold weapons to Iran? Now, it's the same. There's a Grand Ayatollah that was in charge then. There's a Grand Ayatollah in charge now. It's not like it's a wildly different government. It's not like that was a Republican government or a Democratic government. I don't mean party-wise, but I mean ideologically. No, it's the same mullahs who are running the show. And Reagan sold them weapons. That's a fact, right? And negotiated with terrorists and then gave them funding and weapons. So will you admit that Reagan was a giant funder of terrorism? No, then shut the fuck up about Obama.
Yes. Direct funder.
Yeah.
Not indirectly, where he gave them their own money, but gave arms, sold them direct. Here's quid pro quo. Here's money, here's this.
My final thing is I respect Senator Ted Cruz for identifying that money that goes to Iran will inevitably, obviously, every cent will go to a terrorist organization, and I expect consistency out of him. If we do get rid of the sanctions and international, including American companies, are allowed to trade with Iran, when they do, and there will probably be some American oil companies involved in that, I want him to then point those companies out by name and say that they are leading sponsors of terrorism.
Well, I'll start that.
I don't think he's going to do that.
Because when we had sanctions at a different time on Iran, there was one company that did violate those sanctions, and its name was Halliburton. Halliburton set up a subsidiary in Tehran, Iran. Why? Because they're going to make money. They don't give a shit. No. That's the sanctions, politics. I don't care. But to be fair, at the time, their CEO was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was like, I'm going to make a buck. Of course I'm going to do a deal with the Iranians. The Koch brothers, their dad, how did he get the money? He made a deal with Stalin, literally. And these same guys then turn around talking about terrorism and communism and how the Democrats are doing the wrong things. Please, okay, stop making money off of the worst people on the planet. Then we'll begin to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I make one more point? I was at dinner, and some people said last night that we can't allow Iran to get a nuclear bomb. You can't allow Muslims to have the bomb because they don't care. They're crazy. And I'm like, they already have the bomb in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So if you're afraid of them having it, that already out of the bottle. That genie's out. So that idea that somehow they're going to use it as soon as they get, again, didn't happen. The only country to ever use a nuclear bomb, the United States. So,
Facts be damned.
Doesn't.
Well, look, I think that we should be fair. And so Cruz does not like the Obama plan, but he did articulate, I think, a very, very subtle, very complex, very bold plan to eliminate the Iranian nuclear program in this clip. Oh, wait, no, he hasn't done shit about it. He hasn't said shit about what he would actually do. He's just attacking Obama. Sorry, I thought we had something.
Where's the clip?